Hello there. Thank you so much for tuning into Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of the primary election, which this year is Tuesday, August 11th. My name is Bobby Lucier. This is part of a series of forums that we're bringing you in advance of that primary election. These forums are made possible by our generous underwriters here at Town Meeting TV. Thank you so much to this group of folks. You can find all of our forums at cctv.org/primary or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel where captions are available. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, go ahead and click subscribe so that you can stay tuned to local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we're hearing from one candidate on the ballot for the position of state auditor. Is that the formal name of the position, Tim?
Auditor of Accounts.
Auditor of Accounts, thank you. Tim Ash is here with us. Thank you for joining us, Tim. We should mention that there are two other candidates on the ballot who are not here tonight, and they are Nicholas Grader and Dan Toll. But they have declined the invitation for this forum. So thanks for joining us, Tim.
Thanks, Bob.
We have a list of questions that we've shared with you, and you'll have 90 seconds to answer each question. And I don't have to mention anything about rebuttals because it's just the two of us. So, but if you are tuning in live, then we welcome your questions. Call in 802-862-3966. You can call in and we'll do our best to get your question through here to candidate Tim Ash, and we will screen calls to make sure that it's not something that we've already covered. So that's the plan, and we'll start with your 1-minute opening statement, Tim.
All right, well, thanks, Bobby, and thanks, Channel 17. It's good to be back in this building where I used to work for Community Action down the hall. So I'm Tim Ash. I'm running for state auditor in the Democratic primary on August 11th. And my motivation for running for state auditor is pretty straightforward. I believe at the top level that Vermonters deserve excellence from state government, that they deserve results from state government, and the state auditor is uniquely situated to bring the tools of the office to help deliver those results. There is reason to worry about government's ability to deliver results, and the last 5 years have been really challenging in Vermont. Health insurance premiums went from about the national average to twice the national average. We've spent almost $800 million to create new housing, and yet we don't really see any relief for homeowners and renters. The homeless situation persists at record high levels. And rural communities are really struggling as well, wondering what message they're supposed to take from what's going on in Montpelier, whether it's small schools, community hospitals. The future of rural Vermont seems very much in flux. We also have the risks to the state budget and state programs from the Trump administration in Congress. So on all four fronts, those are, I would say, are my top 4 priorities that I'll bring to the office. And of course, the bread and butter activity of the state auditor, making sure there are financial systems in place and various internal controls to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. That will be the core work that must occur. And then those additional priorities are what I will bring to the office in particular.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. We'll talk a little bit more about your qualifications. So what in your background prepares you for to lead the office of professional auditors, and how would you earn their trust and maintain the rigor of the work from day one?
Yeah, I think the most important experience I bring is being the deputy state auditor for the last 5 years. So I know precisely what I'm getting into, and I'm familiar with the professional audit staff and then the other support staff. In that role, I've overseen the annual financial audits that are performed on behalf of our office by a contractor. I've also overseen dozens of what are called performance audits. That's when we look at a particular state program to determine whether it's doing a good job for Vermonters. Beyond my deputy auditor role, I bring a couple unique experiences to the table. I was an affordable housing developer for about a decade at Cathedral Square, creating hundreds of units of housing. So as I turn the auditor's office's attention to our state's housing crisis, I bring that lens and experience to the table. I'm the president of the board of the Community Health Centers, which is the largest non-hospital-owned primary care organization in Vermont. So when I talk about healthcare costs and healthcare access, I have very real experience kind of diving in at the granular level, and we'll bring that hopefully to the benefit of all Vermonters. My graduate work included instruction in public accounting and public auditing, and I served in the legislature and also in municipal government. So my knowledge of the programs and ins and outs of the state budget are pretty extensive, and so I think I can hit the ground on day one and really deliver results.
Great. Let's talk about the role of the auditor. So outgoing auditor Doug Hoffer shifted the auditor's office from a more traditional bookkeeping role into something closer to a policy analysis shop, often examining not just how money was spent, but whether programs were achieving their intended outcomes. So do you see that as the right model going forward, or would you define the office's role differently?
Yeah, it's been a slow evolution to where the office is now, and under Doug, it's all the news you hear from the state auditor's office is about these performance audits, which are these programmatic investigations. I think it's been a very good evolution for the office because the office still performs the state's annual financial audit. That is done with about half of the office's budget. The other half of the budget, which pays for the actual in-house staff, are looking at programs to make sure Vermonters are getting a good bang for the buck. So you need that balance. You want every dollar to be spent appropriately and reduce the chances that any of it will be embezzled or that it'll be spent wastefully. But then you actually want the dollars that are being spent appropriately to be effective and to deliver results. And one example that maybe 20 years ago people wouldn't have thought as something the auditor should do is we did an audit not long ago about child care inspections. And we found that there are some major gaps in the state's efforts to make sure kids are safe and being supervised by appropriate adults in Vermont's child care facilities. That audit led to a number of steps by the Department for Children and Families to clean up that system and bring more resources to bear so that when parents are dropping off their kids, they know that they're putting them in a safe environment. So when people hear that the office has shifted to these program audits, that's the kind of value that can be delivered and what I hope to continue with.
Great. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit more about the office's role in accountability. Vermont spends hundreds of millions of dollars each year through nonprofit organizations and contractors delivering housing, mental health, substance use, and other human services. So does the auditor's office have the staff, the tools, and the legal authority it needs to follow that money and hold both government agencies and their nonprofit partners accountable for results? And if not, what would you change?
Well, it is absolutely true that from the date that the state auditor was created to today, so much has changed about how state government operates. I don't think the drafters of Vermont's initial statutes and constitution ever envisioned that so much of state government would be performed by people who are outside of state government. A substantial component of the state budget isn't being managed on a day-to-day basis by state employees. It's by contractors. It's payments to healthcare providers and a wide array of outside vendors and contractors. The relationship of the auditor's office to those outside parties is a little tricky. The Supreme Court has ruled that the auditor's office can't directly audit a contractor of the state. While we may debate whether that was the right judgment, that's what they decided. So as state auditor, I think one of my first tasks will be to meet with the various commissioners and secretaries in the executive branch and say, we may not be able to audit your contractors directly, but it's in all of our interest, and most importantly in taxpayers' interest, to make sure that they're performing in an accountable way. So right up front say, when we are going to audit a particular program, let's say it's the Agency of Transportation, we want the Secretary of Transportation to be an ally in holding those contractors accountable. So from my point of view, by having those upfront conversations, we can enlist the agencies to get those records on our behalf and make sure that those hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent appropriately.
Let's talk a little bit about the teeth that this office actually has. So when the auditor's office finds a problem, what tools do you think should be in place to make sure that the findings lead to real change? And what would you do if an agency repeatedly ignored those recommendations?
Yeah, right now the state auditor has fairly limited tools. Some states, they actually give badges to the auditors and they can go out and arrest people. I mean, that's a whole nother world. Our office largely makes change by our commitment to presenting information that is based just on the facts, incontrovertible facts. And so in my role as Deputy State Auditor, I've had a lot of experience in this. We present the information to the agency and to the legislature and say, here are the areas where your program is falling short. Here are the ways you can improve it. They might not like the findings, but they can't really dispute the findings. Now, if they don't want to enact our recommendations, we have fairly limited, we have no legal tool to compel agencies to do what we want. We have to persuade. We can turn to the press. We can go directly to taxpayers. And I think that's one of the ways I hope to modernize the office, is to think, okay, the way we used to try to be persuasive to get agencies to step up, what do we do if they're not? And I think the way we have to put that pressure needs to evolve a bit. And I'll give one example in particular. It has now been years since we identified that the Department of Environmental Conservation, who are responsible for dam safety, which is a pun waiting to happen, but dam safety, it's more important than people realize, and it's most important when you wish it wasn't, right? When a dam fails, it means people can die, property is ruined. We identified that rules which were meant to create more safety are now almost 4 years overdue. And each year we go back to the legislature and say, don't wait until a crisis or a calamity to hold these people accountable. You need these rules in place now. They're meant to keep people safe. So I'll have to use all the powers I can from the office and the tools to try to pressure people to do what's right by Vermonters.
Thanks, Tim. Well, I will remind folks, if you're tuning in live, that you can call in 802-862-3966. You can call in with your questions for our candidate here, Tim Ash, for the State Auditor of Accounts role. Let's talk a little bit about the accessibility of your reporting in the Office of the State Auditor. So audit reports can often be dense and technical. How would you make the findings of this office more accessible and useful to ordinary Vermonters, not just the legislators and the agency heads? And also, in what ways is language access important to the auditor's office?
Yeah, audits are quite dense sometimes, and in part that's the result of our office's requirement to adhere to what are called generally accepted government auditing standards. There's a very dense tome that explains how we have to perform our work so it'll be free from bias and that it will remain objective and just based on the facts. One of the things that I've been very proud to be involved in over the last 5 years as deputy is we send out blanket newsletters to many, many thousands of Vermonters where we're taking those audits and putting them in plain English so they understand not just what we found, but why they should care. I think one of the opportunities ahead is to rely, in addition to sort of the more conventional methods of getting out the plain English explanation of our work through the media and through email and things like that, is social media, which is an untapped opportunity for the office.
You're taking the office to TikTok, Tim?
TikTok, well, TikTok maybe not, but let's I want to succeed one step at a time. So, but we have a lot of opportunity there.
But the question about language access. So, in what ways would your office think about language access?
Yeah, language access is an interesting new frontier, especially as we have more and more Vermonters who are not primarily English speakers. So that's one where I think we would want to follow the lead of the executive branch, who set out the standards for accessibility and non-discrimination. A good example of where we've done that recently is the state's efforts to make all public documents that are available through public websites accessible to people with visual impairment. So I took the lead in our office with one of our senior auditors. So now everything on our website and all of our documents and audits are complying with the latest and highest level of accessibility standards.
That's interesting. There are many different things that the office could focus on. So how do you think the auditor should prioritize the programs and services it chooses to audit in those performance audits on behalf of Vermonters, and maybe give a specific example of something that you might really want to focus on?
Yeah, with just 16 people in the office, we can't audit every program, we can't audit every agency, and as I say, the painstaking process to produce our audits means that they take a little bit more time than we would usually like. for me, there are really two attributes of an area that are most deserving of inspection. One is the impact on Vermonters, like the direct impact, how they feel it. Not just some bureaucratic program, but one that actually impacts people's lives. And then two, where the real dollars are moving around. Examples of where I start to think about heading come January, if I'm lucky enough to be in the office, are primarily start with healthcare. Healthcare costs are eating up all of state government, all of our education budgets. It's crushing small businesses and families. And I think that our office can bring some unique tools to the table to present well-documented findings about wait times for everything from primary care to specialty medical care to mental health care, to look at where there are exorbitant prices that the state employee health plan is paying for, which then would inform broader healthcare reforms. So that would be a kind of an example of where you're actually serving both interests, addressing people's well-being in terms of access, but also going where the money is.
Thanks for that. And let's talk, we've got just a couple minutes here. We'll do one more question about the use of AI. So given the prevalence of AI, as well as the potential environmental impacts and potential for mistakes, should the auditor's office employ AI in its work, maybe also does it currently, and should this use be disclosed to the public if you are using AI?
Well, I have grave personal concerns about AI, not just the environmental component, but a variety of other governance issues, which is another day. The auditor's office doesn't set policy, so the state's how the state wants to chart its course on AI at the moment is for the legislature and the governor. For our office, AI is allowed at present, but not for the writing of reports, not for the research. It can help just prompt some thinking and maybe do almost like an enhanced Google search. But we have established rules for our office about how it can be used for those, what I would call time-saving devices on the upfront of a project. But there could be a role for the auditor's office to identify where AI is being used in state government. We do have a small office of artificial intelligence in the state. People might be surprised to hear that. But I'm not sure that even they will be able to keep tabs on all of the uses going on in state government. And I would be very concerned if the auditor's office put out a report that had AI slop behind it, and I would be determined to make sure that never happens.
Thank you. And you mentioned there are some rules, but is as far in your work, are you using AI right now?
Do you mean me personally or the office?
As deputy auditor.
As deputy state auditor, I do not use AI. The only thing even closely resembling that would be I hit Google searches like most human beings, but that's it.
Okay, well we'll treat that as kind of our first little lightning round question here. We've got a few more short ones. So should the auditor's office audit the University of Vermont or the Vermont State Colleges?
It should be able to audit where the state money goes to those institutions.
Okay. Should state agencies be compelled to comply with the auditor's recommendations?
My answer is surprising, no. They should do it because it's the right thing to do.
Should Vermont increase staffing and resources in the auditor's office?
It's not my first instinct at the moment, but
You said 16 people in the office.
we have 16 people. Maybe in time I'll switch my answer, but for now I'm going to make do with 16 if I'm in the office.
Should Vermont create a legislative accountability committee?
Absolutely, long overdue.
Okay. And should the auditor name state agencies that ignore audit findings?
Yes, repeatedly.
All right. So there you go. I think we're just about at time here, so we're going to give you just 30 seconds or so to close up a quick closing statement.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks again, Bobby. Running for state auditor has been a great treat these last months, speaking to Vermonters all over the state. I usually, when I tell someone I'm running for state auditor, the first question they say is, what is the state auditor? And then I explain it. And when I say, you know, we're the office that makes sure state government is really doing right by Vermonters, and then I ask, are there any programs or areas that you think the state auditor's office ought to take a look at? And suddenly people have lots of ideas. So I hope people will continue to give me their thoughts about how the state auditor could dedicate its time and resources should I be fortunate enough to be in the office. I'm easy to contact at timash.com, and you can also see what I'm calling my accountability agenda there. And I look forward in the next 4.5 weeks to closing the deal with Vermonters throughout the state.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Tim Ash is a candidate in the Democratic primary for State Auditor of Accounts. Thank you for being here, and thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV and our coverage of the primary election, which is on Tuesday, August 11th. You can find this forum and many more at cctv.org/primary, and don't forget to get out and vote. Thanks so much.